Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the series premiere of Uzumaki. Great series premiere. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. I had to look into it because Junji Ito is a name I've heard quite a bit, but I had to scan through some of his work and I was like, yeah, I don't think I had him confirm, and I'm pretty sure this is the first Junji Ito thing I've ever actually seen. I'd scanned some of the manga he's done or stories he's done. I'm like, I don't think I've read or seen any of these, so this is like the first time, so it's interesting. I've never read the manga, nor have I ever saw the live action movie from like 2000, but I didn't know what to fully expect from this series. I actually didn't really know what the story was about. Obviously, you know, like Uzumaki, I know spirals and stuff, but I didn't know what that meant in the context of the story of you're in this small town. Was it Koruzu is the town's name? And so you have like Kirie and Shuichi. Shuichi goes to a school outside of their village. He did up until like middle school, but for high school, he goes to a different school outside of their town. And when he comes back, he's talking to his girlfriend, Kirie, about how, yeah, my dad's not right. The fact is he's obsessed with spirals. And even Shuichi's starting to notice it everywhere. He's like, it's starting to like creep into everything. It's like, oh yeah, this certain pool of water is constantly got whirlwinds in it. And my dad just stays in a room in his study looking at spirals, and to the point that his eyes start like acting independently. And I love that scene. You see Kirie being like independently. You see her trying to like move her eyes independently as he's explaining it, but he's like, yeah, my dad can't even take a bath unless it's like he has to make it spiral first. He's pissed that the food doesn't have whirlwinds or spirals in it. It's like it's completely consumed him. And he's like, I get it, you can laugh about it because it sounds so absurd, but like you don't realize how crazy it is until you've seen it firsthand. But it's like things have kind of been off in the town for a while. And so we get Kirie and her friend Azami from school, and Azami has like a little scar on her head, and she's like, yeah, I got it. I'm trying to impress the boy I like. Funny enough, we actually ended up becoming closer. And in fact, every time I have a crush on a guy, inadvertently, like when they see this scar on my head, it makes them like want to get close to me. So I was like, that's interesting, especially later on when she's like, when her and Shuichi meet for the first time, he's like freaked out because he's like, yo, she's got that spiral energy about her. Don't you feel it? Don't you notice it? And then later on, she's coming after him and being like, yo, like, I can't get you out of my mind. So it doesn't seem like that's ever been her situation with anyone else. Like, for whatever reason, Shuichi became an obsession to her because I wonder if is it because he simply rejected her. Like there could be deeper layers to that of like, well, she's always like, right, I don't like these people, but well, she's like, I've always attracted people, and it's usually the people I crush on. It's almost like I like the sentiment, even though like I might crush on them, and then eventually I lose interest once they start liking me. But it's like the first person who ever rejected her, she becomes obsessed with her, like, oh, I can't get you out of my mind, even though it's like, well, you know, that's your friend's boyfriend. So it's like, but it also like Shuichi's like denouncing, like he pushes back against everything spiral related, especially because the scar on Azami's head starts taking on the form of a spiral. And it's just like, once again, it's like, it's that thing of like, this story will probably never explain a lot of stuff. It's just, you know, going to be wild and crazy, just being wild and crazy, because that might just be Junji Ito's style. But it's like, it probably will never explain anything. And it's not a story that probably needs to explain itself, but it's probably just the descent into horror seems to be kind of like Junji Ito's like style. That's his bag. Because I don't read I don't think I've ever really watched a lot of horror, like full horror. I've heard like comedy, supernatural horrors, like A Princess Resurrection is kind of an example of that. But I've never like come across like I don't think I've read many full-blown horror manga or even manhwa, or even watched any very horror anime. This is kind of like, once again, the first for me. So like, my point is, I don't think a lot of this is ever going to be explained. And even Azami's perspective on this, is it just like the spiral, this need to like consume something, the swirl like kind of consuming and kind of, I don't know if you treat a spiral exactly like you would an Ouroboros, you know, the whole snake eating its own tail thing. Like, I think you could make an argument, especially later parts of the near the end of the episode, how like the spiral will kind of consume the person as it drives them into madness and consumes them, and in both a literal sense and figurative sense in a lot of way. And I'm wondering, is it just it took that aspect of a zombie, her like, oh, liking someone, and then like, oh, now all of these people like me, and once again, the moment someone rejects her, it's like, oh, it like twist and contort her, and it took that small part of her, and the spiral kind of expanded that like element to her to the point she became obsessive over Suichi. Once again, is it just because he rejected her and that's why he became her new obsession? I don't know. Kirie kind of finally gets to some extent, well, initially she kind of, to a small extent, gets to understand what Suichi was talking about when it came to his dad, because his dad came over to her house and was like, yo, like asking Kirie's dad to make him like, oh, it's like, oh, you're like your pottery. He's like, oh, could you make me like a face with like a spiral? And because he's become obsessed with it. And when he eventually gets it from, because Kirie was sent to drop it off, which even she was like, do I really have to go over there? I was like, all right, I'll do it. You know, Suichi's dad. And once he got there, he was like, once she got there, he was like, no, it's okay. I don't need it. And he forms his tongue into a spiral, and you're just like, Jesus Christ. So she runs, because it's like, because at first you're wondering, is everyone seeing this? Or is it just like certain people and you can't really bring it up? Because if you bring it up, you're just going to seem crazy. Like Suichi seemed crazy to, Kirie, but she loves him. So she's not going to like, oh, you're probably like overreacting. And now it's like, okay, things are kind of getting creepy. Then that one guy dropped something off. I was like, what's... I don't know why in my head I was thinking like the spirals were going to make them into like zombies or something. I don't know why that was where my mind went. I was like, is that where this is going to go? And it turned out not to be the case at all. So like, it turns out that Suichi's dad died, and you're like, okay. And Suichi's like, okay, we actually lied to people saying dad fell down the stairs. The thing he got delivered was like a giant container thing, and basically he broke every bone in his body to form his body into the form of a spiral. I was like, oh god, that's gnarly and disgusting. And now he's being cremated, and that's creating a spiral in the sky, which everyone at the funeral is like, wait, are you seeing that? And Suichi's mom is losing it because she can look into clouds and she can see Suichi's dad's face, and it's like a part of like there's almost like there's a spiral leading down to a pond, which we don't know. Like, I don't know if that's kind of implying like, oh, it's like infecting. I don't know if that's supposed to imply. Like, it would seem like you said it was a pond, not necessarily like it was the town's water source. I was wondering if that was going to be like, oh, it's going to start infecting the water or something. But Suichi's mom starts losing it. A zombie, the spiral in their head has gotten even bigger, and Kirie sees it, and it's like, it's not only bigger, it's obviously deeper and endless. But yeah, Suichi's mom is, for lack of a better term, spiraling. I'm sure that's a deeper layer to it too, as everyone's spiraling into madness, but also it's like, how much of this is real, how much of it is like, are we kind of doing like a fully ado type of situation? Once again, I'm tossing that term around a lot. Thanks, Todd Phillips, for adding that term to my vocabulary. I think to a lot of people's vocabulary. It wasn't like, I'd never heard that term until like the whole, oh, Joker fully ado and the sharing of a madness. I'm butchering the explanation, but it's like, yeah, it's a sharing of madness, and it seems like that's what's going to happen, where like maybe it's just a madness that's spreading, but it also seems legitimately like this is like a supernatural thing of like the spirals and stuff. But Suichi's mom is spiraling to the point she cuts off her hair because she doesn't want to even see the swirls in the hair, cuts off her own fingertips, which, even thinking about it again, like, it made me uncomfortable watching that scene. Like, ugh. It gives me that, like, that feeling that makes your skin crawl type of feeling, which even Suichi was talking about, like, how, like, this entire town was starting to get underneath his skin. So it's just like, he was even begging Kirie earlier in the episode. He was like, we should run away together, like, get away from this town. And it's like, well, you have too much here now. It's like, well, your dad's dead, but your mom's here, so you kind of have to stick around for your mom. You have to make sure that every nurse, yourself included, comes in, hat on their head, fingers and covered up because I forgot, it wasn't even just her fingers. Apparently she did it to her toes as well. She had to cut off her prints just because the spirals just made her immediately think about the condition her and Shuichi found Shuichi's dad in. Then there was the Azami thing. Once again, her spiral getting worse as she's like, "Oh, I can't even really see with my right eye." And she takes off her hat, and her right eye is barely hanging on, and eventually gets sucked into the spiral until it disappears. Then she goes off. She tricked one dude who's become obsessed with her. It's like, "Cool, I'll date you if you could trick Shuichi to come meet up with us," which he does. And then we see that the spiral has consumed even more of her face. It's even wider. Both her eyes are going now, and maybe her nose is going, or at least in the process of being going. Home dude gets his arm sucked in, and then his entire body. And just how disturbing it is, you can see it. It didn't just warp into nothingness, because when he's getting sucked into her body, you see her stomach expand. You're just like, oh, that's gnarly. Shuichi's hiding out in a chair and be like, Kirie comes running towards them and being like, yo, look at Azami, and most of her body's gotten sucked into the spiral at this point. You see her arm get sucked in, and then her legs, and all that's left is a shadowy imprint. And then that even vanishes, and you're just like, dude, this is a lot. Like I said, I just don't think we'll ever get an explanation, and once again, I don't think it's meant to have an explanation, but I'm curious to see, will it be no, it really was a supernatural thing that swept this town, or will it be a situation of, at the end of the day, it was kind of this shared madness in the town. And I get the feeling it's going to be a story that's not going to have some happy ending. It's going to be everyone is gone, everyone is dead type of situation. I don't think anyone's going to survive. Because when the story initially started, and we started with Kirie saying these are stories in this town and stuff, I was like, oh, is this going to be episodical? Is it going to be an anthology? Which I think maybe to some extent, maybe we're going to have Shuichi and Kirie be this me, these characters that carry us through these sort of because once again, I haven't read the manga, so I don't know if it's structured that way, or it is a serialized thing of no, it is just one straight story, but there's multiple stories that follow. It's a story of multiple small stories with a through line. But I was thinking, like I said, I thought it would just be yo, this thing is happening in town, and you follow different stories. So this was mainly Shuichi's family situation, and Kirie and Azami. But looking at, because it's only the manga is only 3 volumes from what I was looking up, and the picture I saw on Wikipedia was I think it's of Shuichi, I think Azami, and Kirie. So that was probably just I didn't pay attention, but usually it's the first volume ends up being the picture they use on for the main picture on the Wikipedia pages. So because I'm about to say Azami is dead, so this is actually going to be a pretty short story too, because it's only 4 episodes apparently, which I thought was interesting. But it's 3 volumes, so they're probably going to go through the stories pretty quickly. I would assume that's going to be them adapting everything then, if it's only 4 episodes, but maybe there's just going to be some stuff that they cut out. I do appreciate the art style and style of it all, and just the way everything looks. It's I've never watched a lot of anime with this aesthetic, and I don't know if it's just trying to be as true to the art style of the manga. Because like I said, the one picture from the manga I saw was like I said, I'm pretty sure it's the cover of one of the probably the first volume, and it's in color. But this black and white aesthetic and just the animation, I really like it. It's just, it's not too often that I see black and white animation, so it's always kind of, especially anime style animation in black and white. So it's always kind of, it's really interesting to see. I guess once again, kind of really trying to bring the manga to life in that capacity. I'm actually curious. I wonder if the movie's probably in color, I'd assume. But either way, I'm getting caught up in that. But I just really like the animation and the character designs and just the style of it in general. So I'm excited to continue this and see where things go, because I'm sure things are going to get a lot more fucked up going forward. But I'm curious to see how this develops and what other stories we get, and how the spirals represent. Because as Kirie is right, we didn't even know back then that this was just the beginning. I actually completely forgot to talk about the other angle to the episode too. There was the whole the character that moves extremely slow. It seems like that might have just already been a part of his circumstances of just like he just moves slow and he goes about things slow, but and he kind of got picked on about it. Like some people like stripped him naked and dragged him out of the locker room like that. Just because like one of the characters got irritated. He's like, oh, just looking at your face irritates me. But then it turns out like, I don't know if those are like acne spots on his back or freckles or whatever they were, but they took on the form of spirals in his back. So once again, it's permeating everything, but I wonder, is there a rhyme or reason for anyone or anything happening related to the spirals, or is it just kind of random and it's just spreading more and more? I don't know. That's all we got from that storyline, so that's probably a storyline we might end up revisiting later on. And under what capacities, it's unclear. And how things play out from here. Like I said, I'm pretty sure it's not going to be a happy ending for this story. And I just don't know if anyone's going to walk away happy. I could definitely see this being a thing of, oh, you have an ending where it's like, oh, is it all over? Everything's resolved. And you're like, no, it's about to start again. I could just see this having a depressing ending, but we'll see. I'm curious to see what happens. I also appreciate the intro being like, oh, it's spiral and it spirals out into Uzumaki. I was like, ooh, that's actually really dope. So, but yeah, like I said, I'm excited to see where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.